The first generation Audi Q7 was equipped only with V-twin engines. Almost all of them have timing chains located at the rear. Therefore, when it comes to replacing them, you will have to remove the engine, lower it down from the engine compartment. First, let's talk about diesel engines. 3.0 TDI V6 BUN, CASB 211 horsepower. 3.0 TDI V6 CATA 224 horsepower. 3.0 TDI V6 BUG 233 horsepower. 3.0 TDI V6 CCMA, CJGA, CNRB 239 horsepower. 3.0 TDI V6 CASA 240 horsepower. The most common, popular and desirable engine under the hood of the Audi Q7 is a 3-liter turbodiesel with a displacement of 3.0 liters. This unit has many modifications, but, in fact, it is the same engine, always with one turbine, which is located at the rear in the camber of the cylinder block. The engine is reliable. It can be considered a $1 million engine. But on the way to such a mileage, owners face some troubles. First of all, these are swirl flaps that stop opening and closing normally. In response, the motor chokes and an error appears in the system. The problem is completely ordinary. Either the worn link between the axle and the servo drive falls off, or the valve axis itself gets jammed. Sometimes servos also fail. As usual, there are no original flaps separate from the body with part of the intake manifold. Non-original repair kits 0591982212 with all the necessary parts have been on sale for a long time. The kit will cost up to $110. In addition, the flaps can simply be removed, and it is advisable to remove them from the ECU. From the summer of 2007 to the summer of 2010, on the most powerful 240 horsepower modification with the designation CASA, there were cases when the fuel injection pump began to plan chips. The chips were spread throughout the entire fuel system. The cost of replacing everything in it and cleaning the tank was colossal. As a rule, the problem was solved at the expense of the dealer because this problem happened before the warranty expired. The chips appeared not due to friction in the plungers of the CP4S2 pump, but due to the fact that the rollers under the plungers turned across the drive cams. This happened after one run with a reserve fuel supply. If air bubbles got into the fuel injection pump, the shaft cams could pry the plunger rollers and turn them around. Unfortunately, there was no stopper against a forced turn in the fuel injection pump. That original injection pump was replaced with an improved and more durable one. But the old version of the fuel injection pump does not create problems if you do not drive with a minimum fuel supply. The timing chains of these engines are located on the flywheel side and, as a rule, last more than 300,000 kilometers. If you are not a master with diagnostic software, then you should carefully listen to the circuits after a cold start of the engine. It's better to open the hood and ask someone to start the engine. A clanging sound at startup is the first sign that it's time to go to replace the chains. The 3-liter turbodiesel Audi Q7 should not smoke either at idle or during intense acceleration. Black smoke indicates tired injectors. As a rule, injectors last more than 300,000 kilometers. The turbine life of these engines is quite decent, and problems with it are indicated by errors in pressurization and severe fogging of its housing with oil. Once again, at 150,000 kilometers, it may be necessary to reseal the heat exchanger in the casing of the block, and with runs beyond 300,000 kilometers, intense fogging may appear on the timing case covers. The gears in the so-called throttle valve may also wear out, but they can be replaced with steel ones. 4.2 TDI V8 BTR 326 horsepower. 4.2 TDI V8 CCFA, CCFC 340 horsepower. From the spring of 2007 until the end of production of the first generation Audi Q7 in 2015, a twin turbodiesel V8 was available. Its real displacement is slightly more than 4.1 liters, but the designation uses a more respectable 4.2. This engine grew out of the 3-liter V6. He doesn't complain about reliability problems either. It has even fewer weak points, swirl flaps, and fogging on the timing chain cover. But you shouldn't relax and save money. Engine oil should be changed every 10,000 kilometers or even more often. 6.0 TDI V12 CCGA 500 horsepower. In September 2008, a version of the Audi Q7 appeared with a huge 12-cylinder biturbo diesel, producing 1,000 Newton-meters of torque. This huge cast iron unit is made from two 3-liter turbodiesel V6s. Let us note once again that this is a V-shaped engine with a double V configuration. Its actual working volume is just over 5.9 liters. This motor is reliable and problem-free. Everything said about the diesel V6 and V8 also applies to it. In fact, without repairs or replacement of any attached components, it runs for 150,000 kilometers or more. Let's move on to gasoline engines. 3.6 VR6 FSI BHK 280 horsepower. The base petrol engine for the Audi Q7 is designated 3.6 V6 FSI. In fact, its cylinder block has an inline displace layout, VR6. There is a cast iron cylinder block and direct injection. Of all the gasoline engines, this one is considered the least troublesome. There are no particular problems with direct injection nozzles. However, the timing chains of this engine barely last 200,000 kilometers. They are located at the front, but to replace you still have to remove the engine. Replacement will cost a pretty penny, about $600 for parts, plus labor. 4.2 V8 FSI BAR 350 horsepower. Another gasoline engine has a V-shaped layout. It has a light alloy cylinder block without cast iron liners, direct fuel injection, and the timing chains are located at the rear. Structurally, this engine is well made, and with good maintenance it can last more than 500,000 kilometers. During this time, owners only have to change the chains a couple of times. However, in practice, probably 90% of these engines died and only a few of them were properly cured from scuffing. Scuffing occurs due to overheating of the piston when the fuel atomization of the injectors is disrupted. Overheated pistons, usually several, but not all, rub the cylinder walls. The engine begins to knock and actively consume oil. Lining a thin-walled cylinder block is not so easy. There are still cases of the liners turning, but this happened against the background of a heat exchanger flowing abundantly with oil. 3.0 V6 TFSI CJTC CJWC 272 horsepower. 3.0 V6 TFSI CJWE CTWB 280 horsepower. 3.0 V6 TFSI CJWB CJTB CNAA CTWB CTWA 333 horsepower. Both naturally aspirated gasoline engines were retired in May 2010. The restyled Audi Q7 was equipped with only one petrol engine, 3.0 TFSI. This engine does not have any turbines. The supercharging is provided by an Eaton type drive supercharger. This engine does not shine with reliability and needs to be finished with a file. It consumes oil from the factory, and low-quality gasoline destroys its catalyst with a subsequent appearance of scuffing in the cylinders. Its timing chains barely last 120,000 kilometers and rattle after startup due to the fact that engineers regretted installing check valves in the oil passages. Therefore, the oil flows into the pan, including the hydraulic tensioners being emptied. Servicemen and owners installed check valves themselves. It seems that if you refresh the oil in this engine every 7,500 kilometers, it will be able to serve quite well. 08D6 street manual transmission. Let's move on to transmissions. It's very rare to find an Audi Q7 with a 6-speed. Mechanics. This option exists on cars with a 3.6-liter naturally aspirated petrol engine. Nothing happens to the transmission, but the 2-mass flywheel can empty your wallet by $1,300, and that's without installing it. 2-pedal Audi Q7s were equipped with 6- and 8-speed automatic transmissions, and they are all equally reliable and worthy. It is worth keeping an eye on the tubes that supply ATF to the radiator. They are located low so moisture and reagents destroy them. Almost all the oil can leak out through leaky pipes. The oil in all automatic transmissions of this crossover needs to be changed every 60,000 kilometers. You can use non-original ones from Mobil, but you should buy original filters and pans. ZF6 HP21 0/09L 6-stage automatic transmission. The 3.6 FSI engine was equipped with a ZF6 HP21 automatic transmission. Aisin TR60SN 09D 6-street automatic transmission. Before restyling, diesel V6 and petrol V8 were paired with a 6-speed Aisin. This is a transmission with a huge margin of safety. Aisin ATR81SD, Knoll S-Vosin, 8-street automatic transmission. The updated first-generation Audi Q7 switched to 8-speed automatic Aisin. This transmission has not lost its reliability. If you don't spare money on ATF and filter, it will cover 500,000 kilometers. A wonderful unit, ZF6 HP3209E, 6-speed automatic transmission. The diesel V12 worked with a German automatic ZF6 HP32. There are no special complaints about this transmission either. But with runs under 300,000 kilometers, there are cases when the drum crumbles, the retaining ring flies out of it. After this, gears 3, 5 and reverse disappear. The Audi Q7 with a V12 engine has the most acute problem with rusting of the ATF supply and return pipes from the cooling radiator. All Audi Q7s are all-wheel drive. Here the all-wheel drive is based on a Torsen self-locking differential. This car never had a downshift. As a rule, no problems arise with either the transfer case or the gearboxes. But it's worth updating their oil every 90,000 kilometers. By the way, if you feel jerking when driving with the front wheels turned all the way, then the front gearbox is asking for fresh oil. Many Audi Q7s are equipped with air suspension. It is considered quite reliable, but let's not forget that today the average age of these crossovers is more than 10 years, so troubles do happen. By the way, the least problems are with the air struts. If you choose a Q7 with air suspension, then drive it from the top to the bottom position and back. Ideally, it is also necessary to determine whether the air suspension deflates overnight, if the body sags on one of the wheels or an axle, and after opening the door, the pneumatic compressor begins to pump air into the system and the air is leaking somewhere. In this case, they look for leaks in the residual pressure valves, 7L06168113B. These are fittings through which the cylinders are connected to the pipes from the compressor. Look for leaks using a soap solution. Air can escape both through the threads of the fittings and through the sealing rings at the top of the cylinder flange. Original fittings, residual pressure valves, cost about $150. If the owner feels sorry for such a sum, then substitutes are used. Some kind of plumbing fittings without valves or even foam tape. Top O-rings cost $7, and their service life is shortened by oxides formed underneath them, which need to be removed. The position of the body above each of the four wheels is monitored by sensors. The weak point here is the hinges of their rods, which become sour due to dirt. Their mobility is impaired, and it can all end in broken rods. This can be avoided by cleaning the rods and lubricating the joints. The original rods are sold only together with sensors, 7L06166571, but no one is in a hurry to pay $350 for them. Rods from BMW vehicle ride height sensors, 37,146,792,625 and 37,146,752,797 are ideally suited here. The air spring compressor is located in front on the right sill. Typically a compressor lasts about 100,000 kilometers. Its wear is indicated by the slow inflation of the cylinders, the slow increase in pressure up to 16 bar. This parameter is visible in the diagnostic software. The original repair kit 4L069810 for the air suspension compressor sells for $420. Chinese analogs are half the price. The repair kit includes a dehumidifier that absorbs moisture from the air. If moist air enters the system, frostbite occurs in the winter when the valves on the pneumatic struts and the valves in the compressor are frozen. The pneumatic system can be troubled by errors in the valve block. Against the background of such an error, the opportunity to increase ground clearance disappears. This error may disappear after starting the engine. Typically, these symptoms occur due to worn compressor pressure relief valve seals. Seals, i.e. a couple of rubber rings, you can pick up. After reassembling with new rings and adding silicone grease, the problem disappears. The compressor valve block itself does not fail, unless it might freeze. In the story about the VW Touareg, we talked about the air compressor control relay. It may stick due to age, then the compressor will start working non-stop until it overheats or bursts. The Audi Q7 suspension is made to last. The first replacements had to be made when the mileage was 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers. The front suspension has two ball joints on which the fist rotates. New original lever assemblies cost $900 and $500. This is the most expensive place in the levers. All silent blocks are sold separately according to the original. There are a lot of substitutes. The front wheel bearings are separate from the hubs and last a very long time. For high mileage, you will have to update 4 silent blocks of the front subframe. Each of them will cost $80. Working with a subframe is troublesome. It is worth changing its silent blocks preventively when the engine is removed. Rear suspension arms are cheaper. The most expensive of them is the lower one, about $450. The rest are 2 to 3 times cheaper. There are non-original silent blocks for everyone. In the original, only the lower silent block of the fist is available. It is believed that Audis do not rust, but models from the 2000s have a different opinion. You should not blindly believe that reagents, salt and moisture will not cause any harm to the Q7 body. Corrosion appears and develops deeply and quickly. First of all, it appears in the rear arches, namely, from the inside on the arches, from where it breaks out, swelling the paint. Here it is worth inspecting the spars and mudguards that form the arch. Corrosion is actively growing under all plastic moldings. Thresholds hidden by plastic are often covered with rotten corrosion. Probably in 5 years, these cars will go to the thresholds to be overcooked. Over time, corrosion also peeks out from under the rubber seals, where they trap moisture. For example, at the bottom of doorways. Plus, there are excellent conditions for rust to appear in the cavities behind the front lockers, at the bottom of the front fenders, on the engine shield and in the basin under the windshield. In general, Audis are rusting and the Q7 is no exception. On these cars, you need to clean the drains located behind the front wheel lockers. The end valves of the drains can simply be removed because they greatly narrow the diameter of the drain pipes. If the drains are tightly clogged, then water collects under the windshield. It first accumulates in a compartment under a plastic cover near the front left roof pillar. It can damage the windshield wiper motor and ABS unit. It is also in these hidden places that the first serious corrosion appears. Under the hood, near the front right roof pillar, there is a compartment in which the engine control unit is installed. The block is hidden from the eyes of the owner and serviceman with a plastic cover, so no one sees that the aluminum housing of the ECU gets wet and becomes covered with oxides. It simply gets hit by water flowing down the gutter under the windshield. The top cover of the ECU is not sealed. It has a ventilation valve and a breather. Air must enter the ECU because it has a built-in atmospheric pressure sensor. The part of the ECU with the breather facing the engine shield is covered with a separate plastic cover, but it does not protect from water either. In general, when the car starts to malfunction and complain about problems in the electrical system or stops starting, then it will be too late. Water got inside the ECU and its electrical board was damaged. Sometimes things can be repaired. What to do with this misunderstanding? Water pouring directly onto the ECU. Some owners improve the drainage so that the water collects in a tube or extended trough. In general, so that water does not flow onto the ECU, but under it. Then it flows down the tube under the right locker, or you can make a canopy to cover the ECU. They say that the bottom of a plastic 5-liter canister is ideal. A common problem with the Audi Q7 is the breakdown of the windshield wipers. They suddenly stop working because, in the gearbox, the teeth on the gear break off or the worm gear bursts. The electric motor of the trapezoid fails less often. The original new gearbox of the windshield wiper trapezoid is not sold separately, only assembled with the trapezoid. The cost is more than $900. There are non-original geared motors and non-original trapezoid assemblies on sale. Their cost ranges from $140 to $340. There are also cases of destruction of the hinges of the trapezoid rods. Repair bushings from the trapezoid of a VAZ 2110 car are ideal for repairing them. The rear windshield wiper motor often fails due to water getting into it. The original 8E9955711E will cost $460. There are many substitutes 2 to 3 times cheaper. Audi Q7 with keyless entry system were upset that their battery was discharged overnight. The problem is that water gets into the antenna and electronic board located in the front door handles. One direct hit with a stream of water from a manual washing machine is enough. According to the manufacturer, door handle assemblies need to be replaced. Today, to solve the problem, there are both Chinese antennas and solutions from Craftsman, including new boards. It is good if the electronic components of the door handles have been updated and protected from moisture with silicone or other suitable means. The sore spot in the Audi Q7 is the air conditioning pipe, which is laid along the front left side member behind the fender liner. It is corroded near the front clamp, after which all the freon disappears, and the air conditioning system no longer provides cold air. The Audi Q7 was sold with a panoramic roof. As with many cars, the panorama is more trouble than pleasure. First of all, it creaks. This can be dealt with by disassembling the roof, tightening and fastening all the threaded connections, and using other methods of quieting the creaking parts. Secondly, the drainage pipes of the panoramic roof will burst one day. All the debris accumulated in them, along with moisture, will flow into the interior. First of all, this will be indicated by wet and darkened corners on the roof upholstery. The fan motor for the interior air conditioning system on the Audi Q7 lasts 5 to 6 years. Then a whistle appears or the speed of its operation is not adjusted, and then it simply fails. As a rule, the reason is wear on the commutator brushes. The original fan costs about $450. There are a lot of offers for non-original fans. Craftsman offer options for disassembling the fan to lubricate its axle and replace the electric motor brushes. As the Audi Q7 ages, the power window buttons stop working. As usual, it all starts with the remote control on the driver's door. Accordingly, here the button for controlling the glass on this door stops working in automatic mode, and then works completely the third time. The remote control can be replaced with either a new one, 4F0959-851J5PR, which will cost $130, or an unoriginal one from China. Have you already taken a break from the problems caused by water in this car? Here's another one for you. If the sound in the speakers disappears or the MMI system glitches, then probably water from the hatch drainage pipes has wet the amplifier, which is located on the right behind the trunk trim. If it is not very wet, then drying and soldering the damaged connections will revive it.